So I'm going to call to order the Capital Expenditures Planning Committee meeting of Thursday, November 3rd, 2022. Pursuant to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted via remote means. Members of the public who wish to access this meeting may do so in the following manner. Zoom meeting ID 943-7918-1359, passcode 440606. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so for reasons of economic hardship and despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting.
Thank you. And I do just want to acknowledge the meeting is being recorded. Sorry, I'm just letting people in. So this is the first meeting. I did, if I may just take a moment. It looks like Ian just dropped off. I want to make sure.
Oh dear.
I want to make sure, give him a moment to reconnect. There we go. He's back. So one of the first orders of business on the agenda is to elect a chair. And let me step back. So we are, I'm not a member of the committee. I'm just the staff liaison supporting the committee. It is a 7-member committee. We do have a quorum with 4 members on right now. Steve Durrett, Bob Haley, and Pete Bouchard are not on right now, but they are the appointed members of the committee. Pete is the new planning board representative. Steve Durrett is the schools representative, and Bob Haley is the treasurer collector. With that being said, I would be looking for the 4 members. If anybody is interested and willing to step up and serve as chair, my intention is to make it as easy as possible for you to do so. Prepare the materials and the agenda. I anticipate that if we have 2 more meetings after tonight to hear from departments presenting their projects, we should be able to get through the project requests and then have another meeting or 2 for discussion, evaluation, rating, and recommendation of projects for funding. So just from a time frame and sort of workload and lift, that's what I wanted to let you know. Crickets.
I vote Lisa.
Been there, done that. Don't need to do it again. I nominate Andrew.
This is just not a great time for me to be chairing anything, I'm afraid.
We can nominate someone in absentia, but that's really mean.
I mean, this is Ian. I can take it on if no one wants it. That's fine. Be happy to do it.
Okay. Does a motion?
I move
to nominate.
Andrew, you first. I'll second.
I move to nominate Ian Johnson as chair for the CPC.
I second that motion.
Okay. And because we are remote, it needs to be a roll call vote. So if you just state your name and your vote. We'll start with you. Do you
want to call on us in order that you can see us on your screen, since we don't know what the setup is?
Yes. Lisa.
Okay. Lisa Blazejewski, yes.
Andrew?
Bradley, yes.
Leah? I'll come back to
microphone's on mute too.
Yeah, I'll come back to Leah. Ian?
Johnson, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if Leah realizes her mic's on mute. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, yeah, I got kicked out. McLean, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right.
Okay, so that's 4-0 for being present. Thank you. Kim, I'm going to
Thank
ask you to help
you.
me out as chair
Yes.
here to
Sure.
move us forward to the first.
Absolutely. Yes, let's, Todd Minardi, Deputy Chief Todd Minardi is up to present on the police department request. Todd, do you need me to screen share?
Do you have my PowerPoint?
Yes.
I don't know if I can share it or if you need to share it.
Let me try. I've got it up. Bear with me.
I can try to share it. It's just been a little while.
Yep.
A little rusty.
Um,
No.
There you go.
Is it up?
Yes.
I can't tell.
Yep, there you go.
Okay. So it's nothing new. All we're looking to do this year again is do our annual cruiser replacement schedule. This is, if you were here last year, this isn't going to be much new information for you. So it is part of the capital planning policy to have a systematic replacement schedule. We do this every year. This year we are asking for 4 cruisers. We do understand that we're part of the green communities. We always try to purchase fuel efficient vehicles. We also understand that there is an exemption for police cruisers, but we try to find the most fuel efficient vehicles that we can. So in that vein, we do currently have 8 hybrid interceptors in service, or soon to be, well, they are in service, plus an all-new electric Mustang. There is a policy of recycling vehicles. Sometimes the police cars aren't the best cars to recycle, but we do understand that it's a possibility for sometimes some of our cars to be used by other departments that have older, less efficient vehicles as well. So I do talk to Dana about that at the DPW on a regular basis. He has made a comment to me recently that sometimes it's not really worth it, because it seems by the time they get to him, they start to require a lot of maintenance. So he doesn't seem too excited about taking any of our old cars. Status of the fleet. We currently have 23 vehicles in service, not including our motorcycle. You can see the mileage. I guess if you're on your phone, you can't really see this. Our K9 vehicle is at the bottom. That was donated to us by Central Mass Homeland Security. It's close to 120,000 miles on it. We are working with them currently to try to get that replaced. Their current policy is that they do not do replacements on vehicles. But we are working with them to hopefully get that replaced. But the 4 vehicles above that, if we were to get the K9 vehicle replaced again by Homeland Security, we would still be looking to replace the 4 vehicles above that. There's the 2017 Dodge, it's currently a little over 82,000. 2018 Police Interceptor, that's over 87,000. 2014 Jeep, that's over 94,000. And a 2017 Police Interceptor, that's over 92,000. It's currently taking close to a year to get a new car, believe it or not. So by the time the funding's approved and we go through the process to replace these vehicles I have listed here, they'll be well over 100,000 miles. We still have a couple, if you look up at the top, that have no miles on them. We had 3 cruisers totaled almost a year ago. We're still in the process of getting them replaced. We have one of them out back. It's waiting to get the graphics put on it and a few other things. 128 was just put into service. It's got, a little over 400 miles on it. But we were initially seeking to replace 3 cars last year. We were asked and we agreed to take 1 off of the capital for last year. So I did that with the caveat that we need probably 4 this year. We are hoping to get back on a bit of a regular schedule to just do 3 vehicles a year replacements. These vehicles are all purchased through the statewide contract, either the Plymouth County bid or the Greater Boston Police Council. And that's really all I have for the PowerPoint.
Todd, do you just want to touch on the relationship between staffing and the vehicles?
Well, so if we do increase staff, we generally ask to increase a vehicle. So right now we have 2 to 3 officers assigned per car. We try to keep it at 2 so the vehicle isn't being used literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If we assign 3 officers to a car, it has very little time off. So we did get a car through the ARPA proposal because we added 3 positions. I don't know when we're going to see that car added to our fleet. But we don't have any schedule right now of adding any more vehicles to our fleet unless we add more personnel.
And Todd, this is Ian. I may have missed this, but did you say what type of car? I know you talked about trying to get hybrid. We have hybrids now.
So one of the other issues,
what those would be yet?
So one of the other issues coming up is I've been told, and I haven't seen it, but I've been told the new state contracts are coming out and the cost of the cruisers is going up $5,000 to $6,000. We've been working with a couple different vendors. McGovern is kind of new to the law enforcement municipal vehicle program. We've ordered a couple vehicles from them. They've told us that they have some 2022s that would be leftovers for next year that we could put aside. So I'm not sure if those would be gas or hybrids at this point. I'd have to check on that. It's definitely a supply problem. It depends on what the dealers have as to what we can, ultimately order, because it just takes so long to get them.
Hi, Deputy Chief. This is Andrew. I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little further on the idea, because I think the police has long been a feeder program to a lot of other groups, and I know later on in our conversation tonight we have a group that's looking to put 3 cars on the schedule for the next 3 years. So I understand there's some reluctance about hand-me-downs now. Although so many different departments have really benefited from the police's generosity there, are we at a point where we can say that we're not doing that, or is there just I don't know. You talked about it being something that wasn't very highly favored. I wonder if you could talk about that a little more.
Well, I know initially there was a discussion about you couldn't recycle vehicles, and I think the policy changed a little bit that as long as it was more fuel efficient than the vehicle you were replacing, you were allowed to replace it. It's not really my decision. I usually speak to Dana and say, hey, we're going to be getting rid of, whatever cars we're getting rid of. And I have a conversation with him if he feels like there's some place he can plug that in. I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and the conversation basically was that he ends up having to put so much money into them in maintenance and repairs by the time we're done with them that it's not really a useful process. I know when you have a police car that's been used hard for 100,000+ miles, it can get expensive. We have one of the ones I'm planning on replacing, 126, almost 100,000 miles on it. We just had to spend almost $1,200 to make a repair on it. I didn't have a choice. I didn't want to spend the money on it, but won't be able to replace it for probably a year.
Yeah, and I realize that the cars coming from the police department have hard hours on them. Totally get that. But I also know, looking back historically, that other departments have taken them, like many cars in other departments. Is something changed about the hardness of the hours or something that makes these vehicles, or maybe it's because they're hybrids, and previously we were using like gas-powered, so maybe hybrids just don't take that age as well. Has something changed? Because you guys have always put tough hours on the cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we're not looking to replace any of the hybrids right now. I don't think any of them were on the list. All I can say is like that's the conversation I had with Dana. You know,
Okay, sorry about that.
This is Kim, if I may. 2 points I want to make. One, we are at the point where with many of the cruisers being SUVs, the mileage, if we're trying to replace a vehicle, we're not meeting the Green Communities threshold where the hand-me-down is more fuel efficient than the vehicle it's replacing. Secondly, there is an additional cost right at the get-go. The police cruisers have to be stripped of certain, Todd, what's the correct word?
Equipment.
Yeah, equipment.
They have to have all the graphics taken off them. They have to have holes in the roof sealed up from the antennas.
The back seats replaced.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't have back seats for them.
Right. And so
if they weren't saved to begin with, then it's very hard to get interiors for the rear seats.
So that's part of the analysis too, is it can be several $1,000s just to get them re-outfitted for regular, civilian employee use. So those are some of the factors that are considered, as well as just the overall condition and the maintenance. So Andrew, it's not always just one thing, but it can be the combination of those things. But where
thank you. It's a good reminder, but also a new car is more expensive even with all those things considered. However, the idea, I guess I was thinking some of these coming off were hybrids, but if these are still gas-powered, then it really does become gas-powered versus others, and that falls afoul of the Green Communities, without considering the hybrid model. And Deputy Chief, I did have another question, if I may. I know that you mentioned putting 2 to 3 people per car, and I know that applies to the hybrids and a number of the others. Is the electric vehicle, is that being used by multiple folks as well?
So the Mustang is the chief's vehicle.
The Mustang.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm glad he's using the vehicle. Like when we think about the police vehicles and we think about what you talk about, the hard driving and idle time and all of that, does that really apply to the Mustang? Is the Mustang really in its own category? Because it probably does much more parking just sort of sitting there. Obviously, the chief is out sometimes, but do we consider the use of the Mustang to be very similar to that of the use of the other cars when it's being used as a police vehicle?
So what we call them, what we call our line cars, they're used by the patrol fleet. They're the ones that are getting assigned to 2 or 3 people. They're the ones being used on patrol. There's a number of us, including myself, that have our own vehicles assigned to us. So, my car's not idling all day long. My car's not being driven as hard as, one of the line vehicles that gets driven, but I also don't put as many miles on it. So I would expect, the vehicle that I use to have a much longer life expectancy than some of the line cars. But we do have some like the Dodge and the Jeep that I spoke about are assigned to the detective division. They're quite a bit older, but they still, they have a lot of miles on them. So it comes a point in time where we have to replace those as well.
Of course, thank you. It's a great explanation. Just as a heads up, I would find it very helpful looking at the vehicles to know which ones are considered the line vehicles, which are the hard hour vehicles, because those are the most underrepresented in terms of their mileage. You know, because I think those are the ones where 80,000 miles is like 200,000 miles. But it'd be helpful to see that on the chart, just as a suggestion. Thank you.
Understood.
I just have a general question, since we're converting as much as we can to hybrid or, hybrid/electric. Are these vehicles so far are they performing, adequately for the purpose? Or are you guys finding them to be, worthy of what you need them to do for us?
There's definitely I guess a bit of a learning curve with them. The officers have to get used to the way they operate, but I haven't necessarily been hearing complaints. The jury's kind of still out on maintenance costs.
Mm-hmm.
They're going through tires much faster than the gas models. I think it has something to do with the weight, but it also has something to do with the fact that the power goes to all four wheels at the same time. So we are seeing a definite increase in the use of tires, but other than that, they're still really pretty new. So we haven't made a total determination on maintenance costs yet.
Thank you.
May I ask, if we're not handing the cars down, what is their ultimate end of life? Are they sold off? Are they traded? Are they just returned somehow?
Well, generally, the company we purchased the new cars from gives us some kind of trade-in price. It varies on what it is. We don't really negotiate it with them. They, the old Crown Vics we used to get like $500.
Thank you.
Any other questions from folks?
All right.
No,
Thank
nobody's
you.
popped.
I don't hear any,
Nobody's raising their
so.
hand.
Todd,
right.
Thank you very much.
You all have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
You too. Cheers.
Okay, next up. Todd, do you want to stop sharing your screen and I'll see if I can figure it out
Yeah,
on
I'm
mine?
trying to. I'm struggling with
I
it
know.
right now. I can't seem to get anything to work.
It's okay. Maybe if I try to share, it'll kick you out. Did that work?
I see community development slides now.
Yeah, Kim, you have my presentation, but I think you want to start with Sherry if you could. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
go ahead.
So, well, sorry, because Sherry doesn't have to stay on for my presentation. Sorry.
Thanks,
Okay.
Ed.
Bear with me. Okay. And here we go. All right, let's see.
That's great.
You seeing that?
Yes.
And I think I can. Oh, come on. Sorry about that. Sherry, are you able to see what you want to see?
Yes. Yep. I can see that. Let me just start at any point here.
Yeah.
Sure. Hi, everybody. How are you this evening? So I'm going to talk about 3 different capital projects that the Conservation Department will be bringing forward through capital planning. The first would be 32, 34 Belknap Street, which is the which is those Wicker property, and 31, 33 Eli Whitney Street, which is the Daybright property. Management of Lake Chauncey, and the watershed study, nutrient study that we've been doing so far, and how to manage the pond going forward. And the last thing is town-owned trail maintenance, and protecting our assets going forward in the next years to come. You could hit me.
Yep. Is that good, Sherry?
Nope, you didn't go next yet.
Sorry.
That's okay. I think if you just scroll down, maybe it'll go down.
No, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. That one's on Lake. Oh, there you go. I have these in the wrong order.
Did we miss slide 3?
Oh,
This is
yeah,
slide 4.
Yeah, that's what happened. I was gonna say I have these in
Thank
different order. So the first property we're going to talk about is 28, 32, and 34 Belknap Street. This is the Daybright property. We acquired this in 2020. It's a beautiful property. We just recently talked about acquiring Zero Ruggles, which is the next door property. There's a very large trail system on this property. It connects to several other town-owned properties, and right now we'll have over 100 acres of wildlife corridor and passive recreation land. This property doesn't have any public parking at the moment. There's some locations where people could park on the street, give or take. A lot of people I find often are parking at Fail School. When we acquired the Daybright property, the intent was eventually to build a parking lot. And now that we have added the addition of Zero Ruggles Street, the intent is to continue that need for a parking lot. We now have the option of either putting the parking lot on Eli Whitney Street, which would be at oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the wrong property. I labeled the wrong address on the top. I'm sorry. I see that in my slide. So the option would be at 31 Eli Whitney Street. That's owned by the select board. We could build a larger parking lot there with possibly some sort of gazebo or outdoor classroom, or we could build a smaller parking lot off the end of Breen Road, which would be maybe a 3-car parking lot, give or take, just something for people more like what you see at the Bowman Conservation Area. It's not decided which parking lot would work best. We could probably build both if the town would like it. But the cost of engineering for those parking lots and then just building those parking lots is what we're discussing on that property. If you'd like to go to the next.
Jerry, when you said larger on Eli Whitney, can you just larger isn't dozens of parking spaces?
No, so the engineering department kind of has drafted out a box for me, give or take, with an access driveway into it, and I believe that was exactly 10 spaces, 5 on one side and 5 on the other. Just a simple box where people could pull off of Eli Whitney into this parking lot area. It would need to be graded out. There's quite a difference of change in grade, so with changing the grade and bringing it up to the road level, there'd be an opportunity for some grassed areas, for benches or a gazebo. There's some room to play there, especially considering the fact I believe it's about 5 acres and it's all in the select board's care and custodianship. So it doesn't have the restrictions of Article 97 or like a conservation restriction. So if the town would like to do more, they have the opportunity. There are some wetlands there which will limit your space, but not significantly by the road. It's as you get deeper into that parcel.
And then what would be the surface you're thinking about there? Would it be gravel, whatever, or is the thinking that?
Sure. So for the surface off of Breen, gravel is one of the options with an ADA compliant spot, which would have to be either a firm or compact gravel or possibly asphalt, just for that one spot, which is similar to what we did at the Bowman Conservation Area. There's one spot that's paved and the rest is gravel. If you were going to do it off of Eli Whitney Street, I would recommend doing that whole thing in asphalt, dealing with the stormwater and making it really nice out there so that anyone could park, ADA compliant or not. I wouldn't recommend that one be gravel because it would so much larger. You run into the the risk of having to maintain gravel going forward and having the stormwater wash that out, being such a larger parking lot. But anything 3, 5, 3 or a few spaces, it's okay to, not okay, but it's easy to maintain that as gravel. When you get up to 10, it gets a little more difficult as the years go on. So then, I totally butchered the addresses, I apologize. So this is actually 28, 32, and 34 Belknap Street. This is the Zwicker Farm property, which was originally 30 Belknap Street, but now that's the homestead, which is a 5-acre homestead in the middle of this conservation area surrounding it. This property was acquired in 2021. With the intent of keeping these beautiful fields in the back for passive recreation. There is a trail system on it. The exact location of the trail around hasn't quite been determined by the Trails Committee and the Conservation Commission, but you can walk the property easily at this moment. There's some trails within the wood system. There is an easement that we have at 30 Belknap to get access to the back fields to mow them. So we mow them once a year. We mow one half of the field 1 year, and then the following year we mow the other half of the field so that we leave habitat for nesting birds and insects for later in the season for the winter months. To mow that, we are going to lose the access on December 31st, 2025. It was only a 5-year agreement to get access to that backfield. That unfortunately, that access is owned now by 30 Belknap. I did reach out to them and tried to negotiate whether they'd be interested in giving the town additional access or selling things to the town or having any sort of conversation about that. And they were not interested, basically. They pleasantly declined. So the town will now have to come up with another means to get back to those fields to mow them. There is no other way without going on their property to get to these fields. It's completely wooded. So the town will have to flag the wetlands that are in the way, engineer or design an access road, and then actually build this access road. In the course of doing so, there are some other additional things that this property needs, but there is no formal parking lot at the moment out there. There's a field, and we have some stakes and a little bit of string trying to keep people off the grass, but I often find that cars have driven out into the field in the front. So we'd like to put up some sort of more formal either rocks or posts to keep people from driving across this field, which is currently hayed by a farmer in town. The other thing is, in the original agreement, 30 Belknap Street would have some sort of barrier from their property and our property. That has been survey located. There is iron rods in the ground and stakes. So just having some sort of boundary between those two properties. I've had discussions with the rec department and with DPW. There are some rocks down the street that we could use for some of these boundaries. So we could use those instead of actually having to build anything, but all of that would have to be coordinated. So the capital project is to have the engineering and the design for this new access, and then eventually construct this new access. So then we move on to Lake Chauncey. So in 2019, I'm not sure how many of you were involved, but we did, the rec department and myself came forward to the commission and also to the select board to discuss how to treat the algae blooms that we're seeing in Lake Chauncey, which caused the pond to not be able to be used. It's a hazmat for public health. So in the course of that, it was questioned how these blooms are occurring in the pond. So now in the last year, we've done some research with Woodward and Curran, and we've been doing a nutrient study to just for inside the pond to determine where this algae bloom is coming from, if it's coming from inside the pond. They're at the end of their sampling for this. I believe they have one more sampling in November, which should be occurring next week. And then they'll be drafting up a report for the town to determine whether they think that the algae blooms are being produced by the pond itself. They have made some recommendations that they'd like to do additional samplings next year and also expand the watershed study to be outside of the pond to determine if they're having other factors bringing in the elements that are causing these algae blooms. After they determine what is causing the algae blooms and where they're seeing it, they're going to make some recommendations to the town as to how to treat that going forward. The recommendations you all can do at any moment in time later, once you've achieved them, but the study, they'd like to continue into the next year. And so we bringing forward a plan for them to continue to do this study in the same year. Because if we skipped a year, all the data can be skewed. Right now, they have this year's data. If they skip and we don't start to do this study until 2023 or 2024, 2024 or 2025, they've skipped a year, and something could have happened to the pond in that year that would change their numbers. But they'd like to continue to do the study to give you guys some firm data as to how to treat this going forward. After they've got that firm data, they've made some possible suggestions right now, which were irrigation, weed management, the alum treatment, which we originally brought forward, but they've also brought forward a new request or a new part, which would be a drawdown of the pond. There could be other options after they do the study, but we're just not sure of them at the moment. So this capital project is to start the study, but then eventually down the road, you will see if the town chooses to do it, some capital expenditure to treat the pond.
Just if I may, this is Kim. With the purchase of the several large parcels in the past several years, those purchases have gone. There's been discussion at town meeting, and boards and committees have discussed the purchase and acquisition of this additional open space, leading up to it getting to town meeting. One of the messages that was delivered both in those conversations ahead of town meeting and at town meeting was that there would be ongoing maintenance needs once we acquired the property. And in the case of what you've heard about tonight, there would be some additional initial or one-time significant investment for things like developing parking areas, the easement issue with the Zwicker property. So these are things that were anticipated, but they weren't included with the funding that was set aside for actually purchasing the land. They were identified as future funding needs. So that's why they're coming to you tonight to view them. This is the first time I think you've seen something like this in the capital plan. The way the project is conceived, the funds for both the work on the trails as well as the work on the the parking areas, that probably all could be asked for as one lump sum. The work doesn't all have to be done at the same time, and there is an engineering and design component, and then from there the construction can follow. So one of the things I just want to be completely transparent is I don't know that what you're looking at is the final, how the money would be spread out over the fiscal years. But as I mentioned in my email to you all, Sherry's only lived with us for a limited time before she moves on to a new position with the state. So I wanted to have her present and talk to you tonight, answer questions about the property, the land management aspect of it. And then I think the funding piece, if we want to have further discussion or if that gets tweaked, that's something that we can do without Sherry more easily than me try to answer land management questions for you.
So this is Andrew. I'm also on the board. I'm a liaison for the rec committee. And one of the topics that came up was with regards to some of the parcels of land and opportunity and access for things like recreation. I'm glad to hear that there's already a conversation that's been started in some regard with rec. Would these new parcels be eligible to have any of the area developed for rec purposes?
So Andrew, the Daypray property, that front parcel that's in the care and custodianship of the select board, yes, it's in the select board's custody. So if they chose to do something that is rec related, they have the right to do so. There is some wetland issues there, so they would have to work with the Conservation Commission to form that out. But that parcel doesn't have the restrictions of other parcels which are put into Conservation Commission, which basically defines it as passive recreation. And most things are an active recreation.
Sherry, am I correct? The biggest chunk of the parcels we've recently acquired is under conservation restrictions. So it's limited to passive recreation.
Yes.
And Chair, if I remember correctly too, that roughly 5 acres of that under the select board's control, you said there's some wetlands also, and I think you talked about with the parking lot, there is some definite grade issues, especially as you get to the back. So I don't think it's it's not like you're going to build a field out there without doing a ton of, I don't think you'd ever build a field out there because of the grade issues.
No, I think that would, I don't think you'd have the space for that. Yes, there's about an 8 to 10 foot change in grade from the road. I mean, as you pull up, it looks fine, but it drops off hard. There's a whole foundation under there that I don't think most people know. It's a whole rock foundation from a little farm something. But there's maybe an outdoor classroom or something smaller. But yeah, it dumps in, it's a big change in grade, and then it starts to get into wet quickly after that change in grade.
Thank you.
If you want to go to the next one, Kim, I'll talk about the trails. So this last capital project is to discuss all the trails that we have in town. So there's about 700 acres of town-owned property, not all in the care and custodianship of the Conservation Commission, but there's a lot of walking trails on these properties. I've been working for quite some time with WCLT to figure out where all these trails are, what the assets on these trails are. So the bridges, the kiosks, the stairs, the pavilions, anything that's on there, we've now come up with certain numbers, a numbering system for them, and we've tracked them, their status, what year they were put in, if they need fixing or upgrading, things like that. So we've never formally come up with a plan as to how to manage these things, and most of them are now starting to get into 20 or 30 years old, if not older. And so we're starting to see the need to replace some of the older ones. All along, WCLT has kind of taken that burden on for the town and raised funds or used for Boy Scout projects to fix these. But we're starting to really acquire a lot of land, and that burden is getting really large for the WCLT, especially them being a nonprofit and not a part of the town. Right now, currently, there's 7 benches, 2 boardwalks, which are much longer, 8 kiosks, and 55 bridges. Of those 55 bridges, several of them are what I would call a bog bridge. So the planks that are put together, some of those bog bridges are 4 or 5 sections long. So there's actually more, if you're looking at them as each one of them as a bridge, there's more than 55 of those. That's a lot of assets to maintain, and putting that onus on WCLT is tough. So I'd like to bring forward some sort of capital expenditure to try to target replacing 1 or 2 of them a year, and then eventually just having a cycle where they would be replaced. There are, as we acquire new property, additional bridges needed for those. We just acquired the Daypray property. There's a large span over a beaver dam that is about 8 feet in depth that you can walk down, and then you walk back up. We need a bridge there because there's certain times of the year where the water comes over there and it's impassable, so that you walk to that trail and you have to turn around and walk back the other way or get wet. There's also some larger bridges by the Bowman Conservation Area that I think are close to as my age, that have just met their life expectancy, and they're about 27 to 30 feet long. So they need to be engineered and designed and then constructed out there. But most of the bridges are smaller and could be either bought as a whole or built as a bog bridge with volunteers. And if you'd like to go to the next one, there we go. I'll just get my things. So the Eli Whitney property and the Belknap property are the Zwicker and the Daypray property that I've discussed. So the way I've kind of in my head put it together is that in FY24, we would bundle the engineering for both the parking lot and the new access road for both the Eli Whitney and the Daypray property, and have one firm come up with the design and the scope of that work for the town. And then in 2025, we would start to do permits for these two projects, and then even construct some of these projects. In 2025, we would have to construct the Zwicker Farm access, because we will lose that access in 2026. We can hold on the parking lot if that's the desire. I mean, ultimately, as long as you'd like, but if we wanted to hold until 2026 to do the parking lot, you could do that. But the access to the Zwicker Farm would happen before the end December of 2025.
Sherry, I think this conversation about maintaining the material, the access and the different assets that are on these properties is kind of a blind spot that we've had with the town for any of these properties we've purchased, because I think we've looked at the cost of properties as land property plus the cost of an assessment for the town. But I think you very rightly called to the front the fact that there's some ongoing costs that will need to be factored into this: costs of bridges, paths, benches, that sort of thing. I think that there's a lesson to be taken here for whomever is responsible for assessing properties as we go forward, that we also consider cost of ownership, which has been an absolute blind spot in any conversation we've had that I'm aware of as we've looked at these properties. So I think it's a worthy conversation. I appreciate that we're looking at these as these costs going forward now.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. I think that I think now that the Conservation Department has moved into taking ownership and doing an active role in land management, which has been a wonderful transition. And I think we do a lovely job. And I love working with WCLT. They do a great job. That we really now have a scope of what we have in town and how to manage it. It's just figuring out where to pull the funding. So when we talk about the management of Lake Chauncey, as I said, Woodward and Curran, I spoke with them on the phone last week for a while about what the study looks like right now, what they've come up with, what they've seen over the summer. And during the course of the summer, they saw an algae bloom late in the fall after the beach was closed. So that's why we didn't see the beach close this year. It's undetermined why the year before the beach got closed so many times. Because they didn't do their study then, they can't really comment on that. But this year they didn't see the algae bloom till later in the season, but we did have to post the beach for in I think about the 15th of October, we posted the beach. Well, the Board of Health posted the beach. So in my conversations with Woodward and Curran, they said that they would like to do additional samplings in the pond. And then, as I said, discuss the scope outside of the pond. So the pond itself is actually owned by the state, but the land on one side of it, the border of the shoreline is Conservation Commission. Then there's the whole state hospital. There's some houses that run along the edges of it, the beach, and then it runs back into the state-owned property. So they'd be looking at the state-owned state side. Sorry, they'd be looking at the state side. What impacts that is contributing to it. The state hospital side, what would be coming down the hill from that side. Some of the property owners, but ultimately some of the drainage that's coming off of from Oak Street, Lake Chauncey Road, Chauncey Street, and then Route 9. A lot of that drainage feeds into Lake Chauncey. And some of that could be impacting it and causing these algae blooms. So they would like to, they've basically thrown out this number of 75,000, but that was going to get firmed up as they submit this report to the town. The town should see that report probably the end of January, beginning of February. I told them that we have town meeting in March, and that if we were going to actually move forward with the recommendation of continuing the study, we would need these numbers well before that. So they're going to try to rush as much as possible to get you all as can. in the course of that recommendation, to do additional sampling, they're going to try to firm up more of what possibly could be the outcome for management of this going forward. So right now they've suggested some aeration, weed management, the alum treatment, and the drawdown of the lake. Originally, we came to all of you, or at the Select Board and the Conservation Commission, to ask for the alum treatment. Now, in the course of this whole nutrient study, I've understood that there's weeds in the pond. And so the weeds in the pond are going to have to be managed, because if we were to drop the alum on top of the surface at the moment, it's going to hit the weeds and not get to the bottom of the pond. And really the intent of the alum is kind of like a liner for your pool. You want it to go all the way down to the bottom of the surface, because that's when you're going to get the most value out of adding this alum to the pond. So some sort of mechanism of weed management and the alum could work, or that's why they're starting to talk about drawing down. I don't know if any of you drive into Framingham in the winters, but sometimes they draw down the reservoir there. That's for weed management and for the algae blooms. They do that in the winter to try to kill off everything that's in the pond and then allow it to refill with water. So that would be a similar task that would be done here. It's a lot of money. The range from the hydro raking or aeration to drawing down the pond is a very big scale. It's from 15 to 2 million. I see that. Those numbers can obviously get firmed up. This is really just a big range. But if you chose to draw down the pond, you could also manage other things that are occurring in that area, like fixing culverts or head walls that are on the edges of the pond. And DPW would have the access to these because the water level has dropped. So there could be other departments that could benefit from that, but that's a decision all of you would have to make going forward after you get more research. Yes, Kim, sorry.
The one thing I just want to be very clear, so the study is ongoing. These are just some preliminary thoughts on what recommendations may be and the work that could be proposed. Once they complete the study, and right now it sounds like the ask will be for a second study to examine issues that may exist outside of Lake Chauncey that are contributing to it. So I just want to be very clear. Our intent in putting the piece that addresses how the lake would be treated, those numbers probably really should be changed to TBD, for to be determined, because it's not clear what the path will be yet. And that will be conversations, I would assume, at the select board level, probably with Board of Health and other input. So this is really, given that we're trying to expand the capital, make sure everything that we're anticipating is showing up. We wanted to put this in as much as a placeholder and an acknowledgement that there could be some significant costs being sought to treat the lake. We just don't have that specificity yet of what the exact ask will be.
May I ask for clarification on the study? Because my understanding when we approved the money for the study a year ago, I think at Town Hall, was that we were going to identify what the cause of the blooms were. With a greater level of understanding. And I think what I heard earlier, and I apologize if I misheard it, was that the current study is just looking within the bounds of the pond to see if the blooms are self-generating from within the pond, and that the additional study answers the question about what external factors may be causing it. Is that fair? Because I don't remember that distinction when the original request was made for the study.
So I hope I answered this correctly. The original intent of what we proposed to Woodward and Curry was only inside the pond. So they were asked to only look inside the pond. They weren't asked to look outside the pond at the moment. They thought they would start with the pond. I was not involved with that original discussion, so I can't really speak to why it was not included with everything. But I think this was their first step, because if they saw that there was something in the pond right away, there was no need to do the watershed outside the pond. I think that was their way of trying to save the town from doing an unnecessary watershed study. That's the best speculation I can do on that one.
Thank you.
Yep. And if you want to go to the last one, Kim, next one. So the the town-owned trail maintenance. So I put down about $15,000 a year for construction. That price is for one larger bridge, something like what we did at the Bowman Conservation Area, where we got a prepackaged bridge that was engineered and already designed, and actually came built, that we could just pop in. It runs about $15,000 between fuel and getting a contractor to put it in. If we didn't do a larger bridge and we did one of the smaller bridges, like those bog bridges or a boardwalk, we could probably do more than one. We could absolutely do more than one. We could do 2, 3, maybe even more. There might even be funds left over to do stairs. There's several stairs, and they take a lot to put together. We've had wonderful success with Boy Scouts doing these and raising funds and installing these. I don't know if we've ever had a Boy Scouts project to fix a set of stairs. If we went that road, I think we'd have to help them to engineer and fix them a little, because once they've installed them, now they're already in place. But the $15,000 would allow us to at least pick and choose which projects among the 700 acres that we'd like to add funds to. In FY 25 or 26, I put in $10,000 for engineering. That's for the 2 larger bridges that I discussed earlier. The one at Daypray, where it goes along the flooding from the Beaver Dam, and then the one at the Bowman Conservation Area that's starting to deteriorate heavily. That bridge over the Bowman Conservation Area is actually over the tributary to the reservoir. So should that really start to deteriorate, I imagine that DPW would start having conversations about having it removed, because they would not want to see it fall into the tributary, because it would cause all sorts of damage. If that bridge was to be removed and not rebuilt, we lose the ability to go completely around Sander Pond. And to avoid losing the assets and the trails that we already have and the beautiful system of the Charm Bracelet, we'd like to keep these maintained and to fix them and upgrade them when needed.
If I may, Sherry, too.
Mhm.
Could you talk a little bit about the quantity of bridges? I think we're talking of upwards of 50 that the town controls. So we're trying to get in a cycle of maintenance, because it'll take 15 to 20 years to replace them all. And then you're basically gonna have to start over again.
Yes.
If you could just touch.
Yep. So we have 55 bridges in town that we've documented. Of those 55, I believe 15 of them are bog bridges that are combined of more than one section. So in actuality, we could have up to 67, give or take, bridges in town. So if we only replace 3 a year, do math, it's not my strong suit. I'm sure some of us already done this math.
It'd be upwards of about 20 years to replace them all.
Yeah, 18 years.
So
Yes.
some of the conversation we've had, that's the life expectancy of these bridges. So it's literally just a replacement cycle of all these. That's why we're trying to start to have these conversations.
Yes, and so in the past, the onus has kind of been put on volunteers to replace town-owned bridges. And so now that the Conservation Department has moved into managing their own properties and helping assist the other town-owned properties, we need some sort of plan in place for funding to help. And kiosks and stairs and benches alike.
So this is Andrew again. I think what might also be very helpful and responsible, because you're taking this extraordinary step of finally documenting the assets. These are assets that have gotten zero funding for many, many years. Some of them, I'm sure, is to understand like what the current state of these assets are, because we may find ourselves in a position where we need a slightly larger outlay at the front, so we can catch up with some of these underused pieces. Because if we have, if a quarter of these things are in severe disrepair, let's understand that, because we'll lose use of them if they fall into complete disrepair, and we may be in a worse area for catching up. So just a recommendation that in addition to what you're doing for great work of documenting the assets, let's also try and understand the level of urgency that appears for replacing them.
I agree.
So thank you.
So Keith Martin, I don't know if any of you are familiar with him from WCLT. Him and his crew put together, we discussed how to do all this, but we have actually a master Excel sheet with all of these bridges and their labels and their names for them. And they're all written down as, now they say it's booed, but I'm pretty sure it means good. Good, new, okay, poor, proposed, and so-so. They could probably firm those up into need to be replaced, can wait a few more years, or is okay. I think we can firm that up going forward now that we have a plan. But they have started to document the status of these. And so excuse me, I can go back into that and just take out some of them.
Is consideration of that status reflected in these costs, though? Because I think 15,000, one bridge or 3 bridges. Does that mean we have 3 bridges that are in the need to replace area?
So I just changed the Excel sheet. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 22 bridges that are in poor or so-so condition. And everything else is either good or new.
Because a poor bridge to me sounds like a risk issue as well, not just a beauty of the nature element. And so probably can last a little longer, but if we have like liabilities out there, I think that's a consideration we need to make. And it might not be for next year, but I would recommend that be reflected in the way that this sort of ongoing maintenance be addressed. So thank you for hearing me out.
Yeah, I can get those numbers for everybody. I can have it drafted out so you all can see how many are good, how many are so-so, and whatnot going down. So you can get a real grasp of what that looks like.
Thank you. I find that very helpful. I appreciate it.
Happily. Any other questions? Okay.
I think we're good. Thank you very much, Sherry. And
Thank you all for your time.
hey, best of luck too. We're going to miss you.
Thank you. I will miss you all. So I'll visit though, I promise.
That's good.
Thank you all. Have a good rest of your night.
You too.
Sure.
Bye.
So I think
Thanks, Fred.
next we've got Fred for the rest of the Community Development Department. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. President Arnold, Community Development Director, thank you for having me tonight. I have a very short PowerPoint if we can get to it. And you've heard some of these topics already, so I won't really belabor the point too much. We started with working on the replacement of vehicles last year and wanting to continue that. Our workforce, we have a total of like 6 employees that do drive vehicles. We do have 1 part-time employee. That's on the next slide. So we're using a combination of the town vehicles, if you will. We have 4 that are dedicated to community development, and some of the inspectors are driving their own personal vehicles.
Tim, can you move that forward?
Thank you. Well, that's fine. We do travel on to uneven and off the road sites often. So the vehicles that we're looking for are all-wheel or 4-wheel drive vehicles. Presently, we have the 2012 Ford Escape. That's the one that I presently drive. That's crept over 100,000 miles. As it was mentioned earlier tonight, it's taking upwards of a year to get replacement vehicles. So these vehicles will all be a year older by the time we get to them. The 2011 police Vic, that's really in bad shape. That's the one we're hoping to take off the road immediately. Luckily, the inspector was sitting at the gas pump the other day and the gas tank dropped out of the vehicle. It was lucky he was gassing it up. So the gas, I guess the weight of the gas is what dropped it out, and we were able to get that fixed. But anyway, it's taken a while to get some of this stuff fixed. And the other 2 vehicles, albeit age-wise, they're not ancient, but mile-wise, they really are. And those were vehicles handed down from the police department. As we've talked about on the next slide, even all these vehicles are continuing to have maintenance issues. This is the Escape that we have. There's 3 body panels that are starting to show quite a bit of rust. We've had to have the underbody replaced, and we continue to dump quite a bit of money into it from a maintenance standpoint. So that continues to be a basic problem for all the vehicles we have, and they're not, especially the police. The Interceptor is terrible in light rain, let alone snow and whatnot, that we end up having to do. So those are some of the issues with the vehicles we have. We've been lucky to be able to maintain the income that goes into the general fund. So we have taken in over $1 million consistently, even through COVID, in generating fees through the funds through the department. The vehicles we are looking to replace them with are the Ford, and this is kind of a systematic or systemic decision, is to stay with the Ford, and we're looking at the Escape because it's a relatively small SUV that's an all-wheel drive that we're still able to get on the job sites. The one we're trying to purchase presently is a hybrid. It's strictly a hybrid. It's not electric, and we would anticipate staying with some type of hybrid going forward. And that brings me to questions.
So Fred, I just so I understand, the replacements, is it replacing all 4 over the cycle? And you mentioned the Crown Vic. It sounds like that one's ready to go to the junkyard, but what's kind of the order? Is it multiple in 1 year, or how are you thinking about the replacement time frame?
No, hopefully we can do it. And that's a great question. Hopefully we're going to be able to do it 1 a year, pretty much for the next 3 fiscal years. So we got approved for 1, and we're hoping to take the Crown Vic off because that's the one that's probably the most dangerous one for anybody to be in, especially weather-wise. It's just a matter of being able to get the replacement. As the deputy had mentioned earlier, we've been dealing with McGovern. We were hoping to actually have the vehicle by now, but we still don't know when it's coming in. They won't commit to a date. So they just keep pushing us off. And it's been over 6 months now that we've had the PO and whatnot, but that's why I'm saying it can take upwards of a year. Once we get that one off, it'd probably be the Ford Escape, but that'll be over 11 years old. And then we look at the 2 other police vehicles, assuming they're still functional, and replace those in following fiscal years.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Fred. The costs of the vehicles that you have is 43 through 45,000. Escalating by about 1,000 every year. And I'm wondering if that's based upon actual research, because what I've seen us pay for cars, it seems to me like you're stealing the cars somewhere or something. It just seems way too low.
No, actually, it's for the Escape. It's not that bad. If we had to go to a bigger vehicle, we would be pushing that number, but. Hopefully we'll be able to bring them in all under that cost, actually. So this.
Fred, your numbers are from a state contract, correct? Or yeah.
Yes. So the present one that we're getting will actually be well under that cost. Yeah, if we had to go to a much bigger vehicle, then the price does jump up significantly. But at least 3 of the vehicles we can safely get into Escape without a problem.
Thank you. I appreciate knowing that the numbers are grounded. That's good to know.
Yes. Sounds like everybody's all set with questions, Mary?
Yep.
All right, great.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Fred.
So I think next we have, correct me here, Kim, and glad to see everybody's face here. Sorry, I was on the phone for part of this, but the Recreation Department with Jen Kirkland, Recreation Director, and Matt Griffith, the Golf Manager.
Correct.
Hello to both of you.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Awesome. So thanks so much for having us. I just wanted to start by giving a little bit of update on how the golf course is doing financially. I have Kim, is it fine to share my screen? Yeah, okay. Hold on. Sorry. Okay, so this is just a very small sample. I took our 3 biggest revenue drivers, which are greens fees, memberships, and golf carts over the last 3 fiscal years, to just kind of give you a picture that our revenues are stable. The golf course is doing really well. So I probably should have put this into a slide. I didn't realize how this would look on the screen. But basically, as you can see here, greens fees, FY21, kind of call that the COVID year. That was our best year for greens fees. We went down a little bit in FY22, only taking in 355,000. And this year we're on pace. We're almost halfway to last year's total greens fee revenue. None of these numbers for FY23 include October. We haven't reconciled the end of October yet. Memberships went up a little bit in FY22 from 21, and cart revenue is the biggest driver of revenue. As you may know, when Jack Negosian was in charge of the golf course, or when he was contracted as the golf pro, he took all of the, part of his contract was that he retained all of the golf cart revenue. So now that the golf course is under the town, we're able to capture all of that golf cart revenue. So as you can see, we had a little bit of it from FY21, FY22, we saw $105,000 in revenue. And this year, we're again halfway to at least $105,000 in golf cart revenue. So we are, we're really stable. I feel like the golf course is always busy. And like I said, these are just the 3 main drivers of revenue. There are other income sources like food and beverage, merchandise, things like that. But our revenues are good. I like where it's trending. I don't know, Matt, if you wanted to add anything. Before I get into
I could definitely see a big difference in just, you know, kind of culture that we've been trying to establish there. The golf course on nice days is always busy. You know, I've been talking to a lot of other, you know, golf pros in the area, and, you know, we're pretty much running almost identical to most clubs that I've talked to. You know, nice days are good, bad days, people just aren't playing. But, you know, the summer was probably as busy a summer as I've ever seen at a golf course. It was just constant, steady, just people love the golf course. The golf course was in great shape. Mike Hightower did a phenomenal job this year with that drought. I have pictures from other golf courses where there were 30, 40 yard stretches of just dead grass in the fairways. And Mike stayed on top of it all year, and he really did a good job making sure the course was in good shape. And we got tons of comments how people would play another golf course and then come play ours, and it was in twice the shape that everybody else did. So it was definitely kudos to Mike and his people.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. So before I get into kind of our requests for FY24, are there any questions on any of this that we just kind of went over about our revenues? Because all of our asks are, the revenue source is coming from our retained earnings. And I should just mention, our certified retained earnings balance is 436,000. So we have a pretty healthy reserve right now for, you know, the equipment that we need to keep the golf course in the shape that it is.
Hey, Jen, I would just comment that if folks remember a few years back, we were basically draining that retained earnings and concerned about, you know, having to go to the town. And I think we did for a couple of things.
We did.
Yeah, getting money. So building that back up has just been has been great news, and it's what we want.
Yep.
If I could just improve my golf game. Matt needs to give me some tips there instead of making fun of me every time I play.
Well, I mean, when you set it up for me, I just have to. You know, I mean, I can help anybody.
Yeah.
Great. So, and I apologize, I had my slides, but they're not loading on my computer. So I don't have any pictures of anything, but the pictures that I had anyway were just stock photos. So I'll just walk through without slides, unfortunately, with what our requests are for FY24 and sort of where we're heading for the next couple of years. So the first ask is for a golf simulator, and none of this is new, by the way. I don't know how much turnover there's been on this committee, but it's this is basically the same capital plan that you saw last year. The first ask is for a golf simulator. One of the goals of the golf course is to, you know, I guess not be operational year round, but somewhat to be able to offer something in, you know, the winter, December, January, February, and a simulator would provide us the opportunity to do that. We're still working with some vendors on the best way to go about and getting like what the best situation would be for us to have one of these at the golf course. But again, it would definitely help us be able to offer some golf opportunities over the winter. And if you don't know what golf simulator is, it mimics a real game, but you're inside. It's basically like, Matt could probably explain it way better than I can, so I'll just let him kind of touch on that.
It's a big video game.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a big video game is all it is. And end of January is the PGA show, which in that time, all the vendors really come out with all their new stuff for the year. So I'll be able to get a bunch more info in January on where the technology is going and how we can benefit from that. Because every year everything gets better and better. And one of the things about the new kind of simulators is they're not just golf. I don't know if any of you ever been to the place in Marlborough. I'm just absolutely blanking on that. Apex, yes. So they have a couple baseball, hockey, things like, you know, soccer simulators where the new simulators are all bringing that in. So even if it's not golf, we have a potential to do some stuff with other sports if we can make everything work in the space that we have.
So any questions on the simulator?
I have some questions. So this potentially could be multifunctional as one question, which is interesting. That makes it a little more enticing. And what kind of revenue do you think you could garner from that? Also, are there any golf courses locally, or how far away are the closest golf courses that have a simulator like this?
There used to actually be 2 in Westborough, but I don't think that they are around anymore. Most people, a lot of our members actually do already go to different places to do simulator leagues over the winter. So, and it's 12 to 16 guys, you know, every Tuesday or whatever. So we would be able to just capture that automatically. And what usually with a simulator, it's an per hour fee. So whether it's $50 an hour, you know, and then everyone splits it, that's where you would get the revenue, and just having the golf course open, and then any kind of food and beverage bonus on top of that can be made. But it definitely could drive some extra revenue, and something like this we can use year round. You know, if it's a rainy day, we could do something and get people in the shop instead of having no golf revenue that day. So there are a lot of positives that can come from it, and just being able to stay in everyone's mind all year, especially during the winter, is a huge bonus marketing wise.
Would that
I believe there's still the 4 Golf here in Westborough.
Okay, I thought 4 Golf closed, but I've never been there, so I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think it's open, but every time I tried getting in there, I could never get, in essence, a tee time. It was so busy. So I think it's still there, but what I've seen with these things, just being for golf, they're tough to get, especially in winter or bad days. So I think, you know, the revenue ability, I believe, is tremendous.
Yeah, and especially if we can find a system that can do multiple sports.
Correct.
You know, being able to, you know, if the baseball team needs to do something in the wintertime, being able to offer that could be huge.
Hi, Matt.
Awesome.
I
And
realize
do you
this
think,
is
do you think that would offset the cost of staffing and the lights on and things like that to run it and keep things open during the winter? Are we trying to be 12 months absolutely year round implementing this?
Matt, I'll let you respond, but I did want to just note that we never like close the pro shop. So their lights and water and heat, that it is year round. Matt is on staff year round. So it's not like we would have to like reopen the golf course. As far as staffing, I can let Matt address that. My sort of just thought would be, it wouldn't be, we wouldn't have to staff the golf course the way we do now, like, 12 plus hours a day. I think it would be, on a reservation base, maybe after work hours, some weekend. But Matt, I'll let you take it. I just wanted to pipe in there.
Yeah, we would kind of staff it, especially, year one, it would be a complete guess. So, we would have to take a look at how popular it is. And if it is busy, then, we would staff it accordingly, no question. I mean, the good thing with this is only one person needs to be there. So if, I was there from, let's just say 8 to 4, then someone else worked 4 to 9 or whatever it is. So it would just have to be kind of based on how busy it was. And after a while, we'd get a much better feel of staffing and be able to streamline it even more.
Hi, Matt. This is Andrew. I realize this isn't a capital question, but I'd love to have some visibility into the ongoing costs, and I not in terms of the staffing, which is also very important, but very much for the cost of regular maintenance of downloads, regular replacement of equipment, that sort of thing, upgrading servers, computers, that sort of thing. I'm sure that there's cost of ownership that exists out there, and I'd love to see what that is, because that'll end up hitting the rec on the other side of the budget, non-capital.
Right. Once we buy the actual system, then that comes with all the upgrades for the year. Most places supply all the computers as part of the actual simulator, so the eventual costs aren't that high. Usually they will have a 5 or 6 year warranty on all the computer process, and most of it includes. I can get specific numbers for you, but most of it includes all the upgrades.
And if I may,
It's great to know.
Just a reminder that the golf club operates as an enterprise fund. So all of the revenue, any additional revenue that it takes in, running a simulator goes into their coffers, if you will, and supports their both that programming and other. So it does. I just wanted to make sure, I think you're aware, but it is an enterprise fund.
All right, so I think that's the simulator. The next ask for FY24 is a utility tractor. This actually got moved up the line in replace of another utility vehicle. After speaking with Mike Hightower, this is more of an immediate need. This tractor is over 30 years old. We need a reliable tractor to just maintain the golf course. There are some attachment parts that Mike is in need of that would no longer, he's not able to buy the attachments that he needs because he won't fit this old of a model. So he was on the phone today getting quotes, and the final quote that he had, it'll be about $50,000 when we go to buy it. So again, it's just a necessity for the golf course to have a reliable tractor. The reason people come play at a golf course, I say this every year all the time, is because of the condition of the course. If we didn't have a plush green golf course, people wouldn't play. It's just really that simple. And all of this machinery is very much needed to maintain the integrity of the course. And we keep our vehicles. We're not turning vehicles over. Mike takes very good care of them. they're housed properly, and we use them until we can't. It's an investment, but it's just a necessity for to keep the course in the shape that it's in. Happy to
And
answer.
also, it helps when we are doing any upgrades or on the golf course, whether it's tee boxes, whether it's rebuilding bunkers, to have a piece of equipment that you can use that you don't have to rent or you don't have to have someone else bring in is a big help as well, because those can be very expensive to rent.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Mm-hmm.
So this page that Kim has on our screen and that's on my handout, this was originally flagged for FY25 at 65,000, and now we're estimating closer to 50, but moving up to 24.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I had that correct.
That was happening today. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yep. No problem.
Jen and I met this afternoon and moved some things around. I will resend the corrected, and the other piece I will resend you is just a summary without all the detail, just the project and the year and the amount, so that the grid. So yeah, my apologies.
Thank you.
No, it's my fault because
life moves fast. You get just making sure I'm keeping up.
No, it all just happened literally between 3 and 5 today. So it's my fault. So happy to answer any questions on the tractor. And so then I don't know how what we usually do is I sort of just give you a brief overview of what's expected to come up in the next couple of years. So for FY25, that utility vehicle that you were expecting to see in FY24, that utility vehicle will come up in FY25, along with a rough mower. Again, mowers are important. All of it's important, but mowers, maybe are most important. And again, I feel like I say this all the time, but you just can't, use your backyard mower for a golf course. You need this specialized equipment. Certain mowers only mow certain parts of the golf course. And then looking ahead to FY26, we have another mower. So it's a different type of mower, it's a fairway mower. And then out in FY27, again, another mower, a different type, again, a step cut mower. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any specific on any of the upcoming projects, equipment.
Hi, Jen, this is Andrew. If you put aside the mowers and just talk about the utility vehicle and the tractor, with an understanding that clearly you need this to run the golf course. There's no question about it, and I don't mean to question that. Yeah. But it seems that both of those vehicles would have an off-season with the golf. But it may be that something that the DPW may have a use for. Has there ever been a conversation for certain types of equipment? Because they also have facilities for maintenance and care, and they can do certain things here that is probably beyond the scope of the golf course. But would vehicles like that, has there been a discussion with DPW about co-ownership?
Not to my knowledge. Kim might have a different,
Right.
Kim wants to chime in, but I have not heard of anything like that.
I think it's something that could be considered. There are the two challenges, and not that they're insurmountable. One, when you pay with the funds when you purchase the vehicle using funds from the enterprise fund, that's really what its intended use is and that doesn't mean that there couldn't be co-ownership, and DPW funds a portion of it. But I also think the type of the vehicle, it's not as, it's a different type of vehicle from what they use at the DPW, but it's certainly something that, we can raise with Chris.
I appreciate that, especially like a tractor. I mean, to me, that's a salt shoveler, which works perfectly fine in the winter. To the funding, there's nothing technically stopping the town from owning it and having the golf course lease it. I'm air quoting leasing as a cost. So it would be leased, again, air quoting at a better rate than they could lease regular equipment, as sort of helping support this co-ownership. I'm getting into the weeds of financing, and I don't mean to, but I just think that there's a way to get robust use of this, and to keep useful tools that may be useful elsewhere in the town. Keep deploying them.
One thing I'll point out is that area is maintained during the winter because the restaurant stays open. So some of that equipment is used. Now, granted, it may not be used as much during the winter because it's plowing versus needing to be out on the greens as much, but the equipment is used to maintain the parking lot in certain areas around the restaurant. And to the earlier point, we're really looking to turn the golf course into a destination 12 months out of the year. So there may be an opportunity for the equipment to be used there too.
And basically exactly what Kim said. I know golf is, you see golf in the spring and summer and fall, but the whole operation doesn't just shut down over the winter. I can't get into the details of what Mike does, but he, there is still work that needs to be done in the quote unquote off season. And some of that work starts as early as February. So again, it's not just like we shut everything down on December 1st and don't open back up until, March 1st. I'm not implying that that's what you were saying, but just kind of, there's some work behind the scenes in the off season. Granted, not as much as when we're on, but in the off season, there is still things that need to get done.
I appreciate that, Jen, and I think you do a phenomenal job of everything that's happened within rec and specifically within the golf club as well. But I would also be, derelict in my own responsibilities if I didn't take a step back and asked if there were other dots we couldn't connect to the benefit of this town in a way that maybe the question hasn't been asked before. So I thank you very much for the consideration of it.
Yeah, of course. So that was all I had on the golf side. Are there any other questions? And then you won't see anything on the rec side this capital cycle. We have a few smaller projects that are in the works, but nothing, we don't have any capital right now. So it was just the golf course.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Matt. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for being here. Sorry we're a little later than was on the agenda, but appreciate you.
No worries.
Oh,
thanks.
No problem at all.
Good night.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Matt.
guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So I think last thing on our agenda was to set our future meeting schedule, or at least talk about it. Is that correct, Kim?
Yes. It's been a little challenging. Thank you I gave you a very long list of dates. And while I've got the four of you, I just wanted to identify Wednesday, the 16th and Monday, the 21st appear to be the best options at the moment. I wanted to inquire about Thursday, the 17th and how that works. And I don't know if people are prepared to answer that now, but what I'm anticipating based on who's left to come before you, we have the fire department, DPW, the schools. I do know we have the IT department will have, I think, 2 requests. You'll see something related to the Bewalt Trail and potentially something from the senior center. So in my mind, we can get through those in 2 meetings. Just wanted to make sure, if possible, if we can hear from the departments before Thanksgiving and then meet the week after Thanksgiving to do the evaluation and have the discussion, for the recommendations for the capital budget for FY24. That would put us into the first week of December, hopefully having things pretty well buttoned up.
I can make all 3 of those. They'll work for me.
Yeah, as far as I know, I can do them unless I'm completely blanking. That's something I have going on. Or barring catastrophe, as I always like to caveat.
I know. I know this gets to be a very compressed process. One of the things I wanted to mention, you've heard it last year. I think you've seen it discussed at town meeting, particularly DPW, fire in the schools where there are bigger purchases, equipment, and some building projects. We can continue to see cost increases, and the challenge is trying to adequately identify all of the costs so that we're not in a situation where they bring a project forward, get it approved, and then go to purchase and don't have them enough money. I mean, the department heads are literally, you heard Jen today, right up to the last minute trying to get the best cost estimates to bring to you. So between that and just the challenges of trying to figure out the supply chain issues, our already compressed process and tight time frame is just that sort of magnifies or amplifies some of the challenges. What I can do is I'll send a follow-up email tomorrow and see if we can pin down 2 meeting dates. I do know Steve Durrett serves on the school committee. I do believe Wednesday the 16th is a school committee meeting night. I will double check with him. And then I also know that Bob Haley, who's our treasurer collector, may not be available for a couple of meetings over the next couple of weeks. So I just need to make sure we have a quorum.
Great. Thank you, Kim.
Yep.
Any questions, further questions for Kim? Anything else to come before the committee?
Okay.
If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Seconded.
Thank you, Andrew. And all those in favor, be a roll call vote. So Lisa,
Please, Juski, yes.
Andrew,
Bradley, yes.
Leah,
McLean, yes.
and Johnson, yes. So thank you guys, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kim.
Take care.
Cheers.